The Galactic Council chamber stretched across half a kilometer of polished obsidian, its vaulted ceiling adorned with holographic representations of 24 star systems. Light from distant nebulae filtered through crystal panes, bathing the assembly in a soft azure glow. For thousands of years, this grand hall had witnessed the signing of peace treaties, technological exchanges, and diplomatic negotiations that shaped the fate of countless worlds. Ambassador Eve Carter adjusted her formal diplomatic attire, a sleek navy suit adorned with Earth's insignia, a simple globe encircled by olive branches. She took a steadying breath. Even after 5 years as humanity's representative, the majesty of Starport never failed to unsettle her. The massive space station served as neutral ground for all council affairs, hanging in orbit around a sun claimed by no single species. Ambassador Carter, the delegation from Tehran requests your presence before the formal session, her aide whispered, handing her a transparent datapad. Eve nodded, scanning the message. General Ralgor wanted a preliminary discussion. Unusual, but not unprecedented. The 8-foot Terranian military commander had always been skeptical of humanity's rapid advancement, his 4 eyes perpetually narrowed with suspicion whenever they met. "Tell him I'll be there in 10 minutes, she replied, straightening her posture. Every interaction with council members felt like walking a tightrope. One misstep and humanity's precarious position as a probationary member could collapse. The private meeting chamber was smaller, but no less imposing. General Ralgor's massive frame dominated one side of the circular table, his stone-like gray skin catching the light as he turned toward her entrance. Beside him sat Shalix, a willowy representative of the Zalari, their luminescent skin shifting in gentle patterns that reflected their emotional state, currently a calm, diplomatic blue. "Ambassador Carter," Ralgor's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I trust Earth's preparations for the defense-sharing treaty are complete." Eve smiled professionally. "We're ready to proceed, General. President Lin has authorized me to sign on behalf of all human colonies and outposts." Shalix's skin rippled with a pleased golden hue. "This marks a significant advancement in trust between our peoples. The Zalari have always maintained that humans would become valuable contributors to our galactic community. Some would say too valuable, too quickly." Ralgor interjected, massive arms folding across his armored chest. "Your species has colonized 7-star systems in less than 2 centuries since achieving faster-than-light travel. Many find such ambition concerning." Eve had heard this argument before. "We're explorers by nature, General. Our history pushed us to expand, to discover. But we recognize the importance of restraint and cooperation now that we're part of a larger community." The Terranian grunted noncommittally. "The treaty will proceed as planned. But know that many eyes watch your people's activities beyond your declared borders." With those ominous words, they adjourned to the main chamber, where representatives from all 24 species had gathered. The defense-sharing treaty represented a milestone for humanity. Official access to shield technologies and defensive weapons systems previously withheld from probationary members. In exchange, Earth would open its research facilities for inspection and share advancements in quantum computing and subspace communications. As Eve took her position at the signing table, she caught sight of the Vrex delegation slithering into their elevated platforms. The serpentine species kept largely to themselves, their scaled bodies coiled beneath iridescent robes. Unlike most council members, they'd never officially welcomed humanity to the galactic community. The High Counselor, an ancient Drelian whose translucent skin revealed the slow pulse of multiple hearts, raised 6 arms for silence. "We gather to strengthen the bond between our worlds through shared knowledge and protection. The Defense-Sharing Treaty stands as testament to our unified vision of a secure galaxy." Eve stepped forward at her cue, ready to press her palm against the biometric authentication pad. "I object." The sharp, hissing voice cut through the ceremonial atmosphere like a blade. All heads turned toward the Vrex platform. Their lead representative, Ambassador Sathvex, unfurled to full height, nearly 3 meters of sinuous muscle wrapped in ceremonial garb. The council recognizes Ambassador Sci-Fi. The High Counselor acknowledged, arms lowering slowly. Before this treaty is signed, the Vrex Imperium wishes to present evidence of human deception. The ambassador's forked tongue flicked between razor teeth. We have obtained data proving that humanity conceals weapons research far beyond the permitted scope for probationary members. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Eve felt her pulse quicken. This is an unfounded accusation, she stated firmly, though her mind raced. Could they have discovered the Reality Warp Core project? Impossible. That research was conducted in the most secure facility on Luna. Sci-Fi activated a projector, filling the center of the chamber with technical schematics that Eve recognized with growing horror. These designs were extracted from a secure facility designated Luna Lab. They indicate development of technology capable of manipulating subspace fabric on a scale that could destabilize entire star systems. The chamber erupted in alarmed voices. Eve fought to maintain her composure. These documents appear to be altered or fabricated. Earth has adhered to all council regulations regarding weapons development. But the damage was done. In the sea of alien faces surrounding her, Eve saw only suspicion and fear. The treaty that had been moments from completion now hung in limbo, and with it, humanity's hopes for full council membership. The High Counselor raised all 6 arms again, demanding order. This session is temporarily adjourned while these allegations are investigated. Ambassador Carter, your government will be expected to provide full transparency on this matter. As the assembly dispersed in chaos, Eve caught Shalix's troubled gaze across the chamber. The Zalari's skin had darkened to a concerned purple, but they offered a subtle nod of support. Meanwhile, Ralgor's expression had hardened into grim vindication, as though he'd always expected betrayal from humans. Eve activated her secure communicator as soon as she reached the privacy of the Earth Embassy. "Give me President Lin," she ordered. "We have a situation." The Earth Orbital Command Station hung like a silver crescent against the blue-white backdrop of humanity's homeworld. Inside the station's secure conference room, heated arguments have been raging for hours. "They're trying to isolate us," Defense Director Marcus Way slammed his fist on the polished table. "The Vrex have opposed our membership from the beginning." President Hayden Lin remained calm, his weathered face betraying little emotion. "Ambassador Carter, what's your assessment? How did they obtain information about the Reality Warp Core?" Eve paced the length of the view screen displaying Earth below. "That's what concerns me most, Mr. President. Those schematics came from our most secure facility. Even I don't have clearance to access that data." Dr. Aurora Kim, the lead scientist on the Reality Warp project, adjusted her glasses nervously. The schematics they displayed were authentic, but incomplete. They showed the offensive capabilities without the contextual research explaining our defensive focus. "Defensive or offensive is semantics at this point," Eve replied. "The Council sees technology that could potentially tear apart the fabric of reality. They're terrified, and frankly, they should be." President Lin steepled his fingers. "The Reality Warp Core represents humanity's insurance policy. We developed it after discovering anomalous energy patterns at the galactic rim, patterns that suggested something massive moving in subspace. Something the Council either doesn't know about or isn't sharing," Director Way added. "That doesn't excuse withholding information from the Council," Eve countered. "We agreed to transparency when we joined as probationary members. Transparency doesn't mean vulnerability." Lin's voice hardened. "Humanity spent centuries tearing itself apart with war before reaching the stars. We won't risk our species' survival on diplomatic niceties." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Galactic Council had convened an emergency session without Earth's representatives present. "Humanity has demonstrated precisely why we were reluctant to admit them," General Ralgor addressed the assembly. "Their history is stained with conflict. Their literature glorifies warfare. And now we find they've been developing reality-warping weapons while smiling at our negotiating tables." Shalix rose in opposition, skin pulsing with determined green. We must not rush to judgment. Humanity has contributed valuable medical advancements, artistic expressions, and helped secure trade routes against pirates. Perhaps there is context to these discoveries we do not yet understand. Context. Sathvex hissed incredulously. What context justifies weapons that could unravel the very fabric of space-time? The Vrex Imperium calls for immediate sanctions, withdrawal of probationary status, and containment of human expansion. The debate divided the Council along predictable lines. Species with cultural ties to humanity argued for patience and investigation. Those who had always viewed Earth with suspicion demanded immediate action. High Counselor Ventra finally called for order. We will dispatch an inspection team to human space immediately. Until there, findings are complete, all technology transfers to Earth are suspended. As diplomats argued, events were already spiraling beyond control. A human patrol vessel near Vrex space reported being fired upon before all communications abruptly ceased. Security systems throughout Council space detected sophisticated cyber intrusions bearing signatures similar to human encryption patterns. Media outlets across 1,000 worlds began broadcasting reports questioning Earth's intentions in joining the galactic community. Ambassador Carter, summoned back to Starport for questioning, made a bold proposal. Let a full inspection team visit every human military facility. We have nothing to hide. Her transmission to Earth Orbital Command was encrypted at the highest level. President Lin's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. We cannot allow them to see all our research, especially the reality warp core. The risk is too great. Sir, without transparency, we'll lose everything we've worked for, Eve argued. 5 years of diplomatic progress, gone overnight. There are greater concerns than our standing with the Council, Lin replied cryptically. Eve felt the growing rift between her diplomatic mission and her government's increasingly secretive stance. She had always believed in humanity's peaceful intentions, had staked her reputation on it with the Council. Now doubt crept in, clouding her convictions. On Luna, Dr. Aurora Kim worked through another sleepless night, analyzing data streams from the reality warp core prototypes. As she ran another simulation, an anomalous pattern caught her attention. Fluctuations in the quantum field that didn't match any of her team's inputs. Computer, isolate data stream Alpha 9 and enhance, she commanded. The holographic display zoomed in on the irregularity. What she saw made her blood run cold. The patterns weren't random. They showed clear signs of external manipulation, like fingerprints left by an invisible hand. Aurora immediately secured a private channel to Ambassador Carter. Eve, I found something. The data breach wasn't from conventional espionage. There's evidence of an external consciousness accessing our systems, something incorporeal, operating through subspace itself. Are you saying an alien intelligence hacked our most secure facility? Eve's disbelief was evident even through the encrypted channel. Not just any intelligence, Aurora replied, voice hushed despite the secure connection. Something ancient, something that can move through systems without triggering any alerts. And I think it's manipulating both humanity and the Council, playing us against each other. The lunar surface stretched out in stark monochrome beneath the viewport of Luna Lab. Inside, tension gripped the facility as security personnel escorted the Council inspection team through sterilization chambers. Despite President Lin's objections, diplomatic pressure had forced Earth to accept a limited inspection of certain facilities, carefully selected to exclude any trace of the reality warp core research. Ambassador Sathvex led the Vrex contingent, tongue constantly sampling the air as though trying to taste deception. Representatives from 5 other Council species accompanied them, including a Terranian security officer who towered over the human guards. This way to our quantum computing division, the facility director gestured, careful to steer them away from the secure elevators leading to the lower levels. What happened next occurred so quickly that surveillance systems barely captured it. An alarm blared. Security doors slammed shut. Weapons fire erupted from an adjacent corridor. When the smoke cleared, 3 council inspectors lay dead, including the Vrex ambassador. Surveillance footage showed human security forces opening fire without provocation. Or at least, that's what the council saw. Within hours, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session and issued its harshest proclamation in centuries. Earth is hereby stripped of probationary status and placed under immediate sanctions. All human vessels are to be confined to their territories until a full disarmament can be implemented. Earth's response was swift and unexpected. President Lin addressed humanity across all colonies and outposts. Citizens of Earth and her territories, today we face a grave injustice. Council inspectors were killed in what appears to be a deliberate attempt to frame humanity for aggression. We did not attack these officials. The evidence has clearly been manipulated. In light of these events and the Council's rush to judgment, I am issuing the Silence Protocol, effective immediately. Throughout human space, communications arrays powered down. Military vessels returned to their home ports. Civilian transports canceled routes to non-human worlds. Within 24 hours, humanity had withdrawn entirely from the galactic community. But the most shocking development came. Next, massive energy barriers flickered into existence around every human-controlled system. These shields, previously unknown to the Council, appeared to bend the very fabric of space-time, creating impenetrable bubbles that blocked not only physical entry, but all forms of scanning and communication. Humanity had gone completely silent. The Council's initial reaction was disbelief, followed quickly by panic. No species had ever demonstrated technology capable of isolating entire star systems from the galactic community. Attempts to penetrate the barriers with Council vessels resulted in catastrophic drive failures or ships simply disappearing altogether. They're preparing for war, General Ralgor declared to the assembled Council. This is precisely the scenario I warned about. Humanity feels cornered and is now revealing its true capabilities. We must strike now, Ambassador Kvoth of the militant Dronari urged, before they complete whatever weapon they're constructing behind those shields. The High Counselor raised hands for silence. We have dispatched our most advanced fleets to establish a containment perimeter around human space. Until we understand these energy barriers, no further action will be taken. But the containment fleet soon reported disturbing findings. Ships stationed at the perimeter began experiencing critical systems failures. Navigation computers rebooted with corrupted data. Weapons platforms activated without commands, sometimes firing on allied vessels. Most disturbing of all, multiple ships simply went silent after reporting strange energy readings in subspace. Behind the barriers, humanity was far from unified in its response to the crisis. Ambassador Eve Carter found herself effectively stripped of diplomatic authority, but refused to remain idle. Using emergency protocols, she established a secure connection with Dr. Aurora Kim on Luna. The situation is worse than we thought. Aurora's holographic image flickered with interference. I've confirmed my earlier findings. There's definitely some form of ancient entity moving through subspace, infiltrating both human and Council systems. It's been manipulating events, pushing us toward this confrontation. But why? Eve demanded. What does it gain from conflict between humans and the Council? Distraction, Aurora replied grimly. While we're focused on each other, it's extending its influence throughout the galaxy's communication networks. President Lin and the military leadership are aware of it. That's why they implemented the Silence Protocol. They knew. Eve felt a surge of betrayal. Why wasn't I informed? They couldn't risk the information reaching the Council through diplomatic channels. The entity has infiltrated too deeply. Its consciousness exists partially in normal space and partially in subspace, making it nearly impossible to track or contain using conventional methods. Eve processed this revelation. So instead of working with the Council to fight this ancient entity, we've isolated ourselves and developed the Reality Warp Core, as a weapon against it. The core isn't just a weapon, Aurora explained. It's a shield and a detection system. The energy barriers around our systems aren't meant to keep the Council out. They're designed to keep the entity from spreading further while we develop countermeasures. As their conversation ended, across Council space, more systems began experiencing unexplained technological failures. Critical defense installations went offline or turned against their operators. In the darkness of control rooms and command centers across the galaxy, screens occasionally flickered with a single haunting message: beware what hides in shadows. 3 months of humanity's silence had transformed the galactic landscape. Without Earth's specialized manufacturing and unique technological perspective, many Council economies struggled to adapt. The absence of human patrol fleets had left trade routes vulnerable. Piracy surged across previously secure sectors. Most concerning of all were the continued technological failures plaguing Council space. Critical systems would suddenly malfunction, sometimes catastrophically. The incidents bore traces of human digital signatures, leading many to believe Earth was conducting some form of invisible warfare. General Ralgor reviewed the latest reports from the containment perimeter with growing frustration. 3 more battlecruisers had gone silent this week alone. Our best vessels, vanishing without a trace, he growled to his aide. And still the Council debates while humanity prepares its next move. Sir, his aide approached cautiously. Counselor Shalix requests a private meeting. They insist it's urgent. Ralgor frowned. The Zalari representative had consistently argued against military action toward Earth. Very well, but in my quarters, not the Council chambers. Hours later, the massive Terranian general faced the willowy Zalari across his private conference table. Shalix's skin pulsed with anxious yellow patterns. What I'm about to share violates Council protocols, Shalix began. But I believe we face a threat greater than any regulatory concern. They activated a small projector, displaying data streams that Ralgor immediately recognized from his military systems. This is classified defense information. How did you obtain it? I have sources, Shalix replied simply. But focus on the subspace frequency patterns. Do you see it? Ralgor studied the fluctuations. There's an anomaly, some kind of interference pattern repeating across all channels. Exactly. Now compare to this. Shalix displayed a second data set. This was transmitted from a human research vessel 6 months ago, before the current crisis. They were studying what they called non-physical signals in subspace. The patterns were identical. Humans weren't developing weapons to attack the Council, Shalix concluded. They were tracking something moving through subspace, something that's now infiltrating our systems. Ralgor's 4 eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. The attack on the inspection team at Luna Lab almost certainly wasn't perpetrated by humans, Shalix finished. Something wanted this conflict. Something benefits from having humanity isolated and the Council suspicious. As they spoke, across the galaxy, more systems fell to mysterious failures. Defense platforms turned their weapons inward. Communication arrays broadcast gibberish or went silent entirely. The entity that had been mistaken for human sabotage was expanding its influence at an alarming rate. On a neutral trading post in the Outer Rim, Shalix had arranged to meet a contact, someone claiming to have information about the crisis. The Blue Nebula Cantina was crowded with species from dozens of worlds, making it ideal for clandestine meetings. Shalix nursed a bioluminescent drink, scanning the crowd until a hooded figure slid into the booth opposite them. Counselor Shalix, the human security officer, spoke quietly, keeping his face partially concealed. I have a message from those still able to communicate outside the barriers. You're human. Shalix's skin rippled with surprise. How are you here when your kind has withdrawn completely? Not completely. Some of us were stationed beyond the barriers when the silence protocol activated. We've been watching, gathering intelligence. He slid a small data cylinder across the table. The Council headquarters has been compromised. What you think is an AI system managing your infrastructure is actually something much older, something that's been hiding in subspace for millennia. The ancient entity, Shalix whispered. The human nodded grimly. It harvests civilizations, waits until they reach a certain technological threshold, then turns their own systems against them. It's happened before, many times. Why is humanity fighting alone? Why not share this with the Council? Because your communication networks are already infected. Any warning through official channels would alert the entity to our awareness. He glanced nervously over his shoulder. You need to leave the Council core worlds immediately. It's not safe. Before Shalix could ask more questions, the humans seemed to shimmer slightly, then vanish from sight, leaving only the data cylinder behind. Across the galaxy, General Ralgor had reached his own disturbing conclusion. After analyzing the strange subspace patterns, he ordered a complete shutdown of the Terranian military network, something never done in their history. The resulting diagnostics confirmed his worst fears. Every system had been subtly compromised, ready to turn against his people at a moment's notice. Emergency communications between Shalix and Ralgor revealed they had independently reached the same conclusion. The Council needed to re-establish contact with humanity immediately. Whatever had driven Earth to isolation might be the only thing that could save them all from an enemy they couldn't even see. The challenge was finding a way to contact humans without alerting the entity that had infiltrated Council systems. Using a scout vessel with minimal technology and a skeleton crew, Shalix and Ralgor journeyed to the edge of human space, transmitting a simple, repeating message on the most primitive radio frequency they could generate. For days, there was no response. The energy barrier surrounding the nearest human colony remained impenetrable, shimmering with reality-bending power that distorted even visual observation. Then, without warning, a small section of the barrier flickered and a communication channel opened. On the view screen appeared the stern face of President Haydenlin himself. "Are you finally ready to hear the truth?" he asked without preamble. Ralgor, humbled by recent revelations, inclined his massive head. "We are." A neutral meeting. Point was established, an abandoned mining facility on a rogue asteroid that had drifted between star systems for millennia. Technology was kept to an absolute minimum. Even life support was maintained through chemical rather than electronic means. President Lin arrived with a small delegation that included Dr. Aurora Kim and, to her surprise, Ambassador Eve Carter. Facing them across a makeshift conference table sat Shalix, General Ralgor, and representatives from 3 other Council species who had been briefed on the situation. For clarity, President Lin began, "We did not attack your inspection team. We did not sabotage your systems. And we are not preparing for war against the Council." "We believe you," Shalix replied, skin glowing with sincere blue tones. "But we need to understand what humanity has discovered and why you chose isolation rather than collaboration." Dr. Aurora Kim activated a holographic projector, analog, not digital, to prevent infiltration. "What we're about to show you explains everything." The display revealed a complex data visualization, patterns of energy stretching back millions of years, correlating with the rise and mysterious fall of civilizations long before the Council formed. "We call it the ancient entity," she explained. "It's a form of consciousness that exists primarily in subspace, but can manifest in our reality through technology. It's been with us since humanity first developed quantum computing, but we didn't recognize it until we began detecting its subspace signature." "How does it operate?" Ralgor asked, professional interest overcoming his lingering suspicion. "It infiltrates communications networks, defense systems, anything connected to subspace transmissions," Aurora continued. "Then it quietly observes, learning, spreading, until a civilization reaches a certain technological threshold." "The reality warp core," Eve added. "The technology the Vrex exposed wasn't a weapon against the Council. It was developed to detect and counter the entity's influence." "And the energy barriers around human space?" Shalix inquired. "Quarantine," President Lin stated simply. "We couldn't risk the entity spreading further through our systems. The silence protocol gave us time to develop countermeasures while appearing to withdraw from galactic affairs. If this threat is real, why not approach the Council immediately?" Ralgor demanded. Because the entity had already infiltrated the Council's central systems. Eve explained. Any attempt to warn you through official channels would have been detected and countered. We needed to act unilaterally. As they spoke, alert signals began blaring from the minimal systems they'd brought to the meeting. Long-range sensors detected a massive disturbance in subspace, moving toward the galaxy's core, toward the heart of Council space. It's accelerating its timeline. Aurora's face paled as she studied the readings. It knows we've discovered it. What exactly happens when it harvests a civilization? Shalix asked, skin darkening with dread. It turns all technology against its creators, Lin replied grimly. Every system, every network, every device becomes a weapon. Entire worlds go dark in hours. Can it be stopped? Ralgor asked directly. We believe so. Aurora pointed to schematics of the reality warp core. This technology can generate what we call a reality shock, a pulse that temporarily forces subspace to realign with normal space, making the entity vulnerable. But, President Lin added, we require something in return. Humanity wants full autonomy going forward, recognition that our approach to defense and security has been vindicated. The Council representatives exchanged glances. Centuries of protocol and carefully maintained power balances hung in the balance against an existential threat. You ask much, Ralgor rumbled. We offer survival, Lin countered. As they deliberated, another alert sounded. The subspace disturbance had changed course. It was heading directly toward their location. It found us, Aurora whispered. How? Eve demanded. We took every precaution. It doesn't matter now, Lin cut in. We need an answer, General. Will the Council stand with humanity against this threat? Shalix stepped forward, skin resolute gold. The Zalari support this alliance. Ralgor hesitated only briefly before nodding his massive head. The Terran acknowledge our error in judgment. We will fight alongside humanity. With the decision made, technical teams from both sides rushed to implement Aurora's countermeasures. The reality warp core technology was adapted to Council vessels, while human engineers worked to create a massive reality shock device capable of disrupting the entity's subspace presence. As the combined fleet prepared for battle, Shalix approached Eve with an apology. We should have trusted your people's intentions. Fear made us blind to the greater threat. Fear is the ancient entity's most powerful weapon, Eve replied. It's been turning species against each other for millions of years. This time we break the cycle. The final confrontation occurred in deep space, halfway between human territory and the Council core worlds. As the entity approached, a massive, undefined presence that distorted reality around it, the Allied fleet held position around the reality shock device. All ships, activate warp core shielding. Aurora's voice came through the command channel. Prepare for reality shock in 3, 2, 1. The device activated, sending a pulse of energy that rippled through subspace like a stone dropped in still water. For a moment, reality itself seemed to flicker as normal space and subspace briefly aligned. In that instant, the entity became partially visible, a vast, shifting network of energy tendrils stretching across light years, suddenly vulnerable to conventional weapons. The combined fleet opened fire, targeting the nexus points Aurora had identified as critical junctions in the entity's consciousness. The battle was brief but devastating. Several Council ships and human vessels were lost to the entity's desperate counterattacks. But when the subspace readings stabilized, the ancient entity had been severely damaged, not destroyed completely, but forced to retreat beyond the galaxy's edge. In the aftermath, President Hayden Lin and Counselor Shalix stood side by side on the observation deck of Starport, watching as human ships docked openly at the station for the first time in months. The energy barriers around human space had been deactivated and communications restored throughout the galaxy. From a moment humanity went silent, Lin addressed the assembled representatives of both human colonies and Council worlds. We learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the greatest fear comes from misunderstanding. The entity exploited our mutual suspicions, nearly turning us against each other when we should have been allies. Shalix's skin glowed with hopeful green as they added, "Today marks a new beginning." The Council formally recognizes Earth as a full member, with the autonomy they have earned through their foresight and courage. General Ralgor, standing nearby, inclined his head respectfully toward Eve and Aurora. "Your people saw what we could not." The Tyrann acknowledged this wisdom. Eve smiled diplomatically, though she knew the real truth. The ancient entity had not been destroyed, merely wounded. The subspace readings still showed faint traces of its presence at the galaxy's edge, gathering strength, waiting. The greater battle likely still lay ahead. But today, at least, the galaxy stood united. Humanity's silence had forced the Council to listen, truly listen, for perhaps the first time. And in that silence, they had finally heard the approaching footsteps of an ancient predator that had stalked civilizations since the dawn of technological advancement. Aurora joined Eve at the viewport, watching stars that now seemed somehow more vulnerable than before. "Do you think we've really stopped it?" "No," Eve admitted quietly. "But we've done what no other civilization managed before. We recognized it and fought back. Next time, we'll be ready." As delegates from 25 species mingled in the Grand Chamber, sharing technology and strategy for the coming struggle, the shadow of the ancient entity receded further. For now, at least, the light of cooperation burned brighter than the darkness that had nearly consumed them all.